Trigger warning. This week's episode discusses suicide and other topics some listeners may find distressing, so listener discretion is advised. It was late July 1966 and 21-year-old John McCabe was happily making his way to his family's ground floor flat at Logie Avenue, about a 16-minute drive northwest of Aberdeen city centre, having been working at sea on a fishing trawler. John had married Eileen a year before, but the pair had been unable to afford their own home, and so when John was away at sea, Eileen would stay at her parents' home in Torry, a 9-minute drive south of Aberdeen, and when John returned from sea, the couple would stay with John's mum Bella, who was 42, his stepdad Adam, who was 38, and his two younger siblings, 13-year-old Murray and 3-year-old Jacqueline, at their flat in Logie Avenue. John was close to his mum Bella and was looking forward to seeing her, and his wife Eileen would be arriving from her mum's home the next day, so John was pretty happy as he walked up the steps to the flat at Logie Avenue. Although when he entered the flat, he was surprised to find it completely empty and his mum and stepdad's bedroom door was locked. John spent the day settling in, thinking that maybe the family had gone away for the day as it was the holiday season. When the family didn't appear for the rest of the day, John wasn't overly concerned. Maybe they had decided to spend a night away to treat the kids. However, when John's wife Eileen arrived the next day and still there was no sign of his family, while he was pleased to see his wife, he wanted to try and find out where his family was. And so the couple visited his grandmother, Bella's mother, Georgina Gray, at her home in Causeway End, a 10-minute walk northwest of Aberdeen city centre, and his grandmother had an interesting story to tell them. Apparently, a few days earlier, Bella's husband Adam and the couple's 3-year-old daughter Jacqueline had turned up at Bella's mum, Georgina's home, and while Jacqueline was happily playing, Adam had told her that Bella had walked out on him, taking her son Murray with her. Georgina said she had been shocked. She hadn't noticed or heard about any issues in Adam and Bella's marriage that would indicate that Bella would run off and take only her son Murray with her. Georgina thought that Adam and Bella were such a well-suited couple. She was sure they could sort things out. John agreed that he hadn't known of any problems in their marriage either. Georgina said that Adam went on to advise her that Bella had likely gone to stay with relatives just outside of Aberdeen. She said that while Adam did appear worried, she was thankful to Adam for coming and letting her know the situation, saying that it was so typical of Adam to put others before his own feelings. Georgina said that Adam and 3-year-old Jacqueline then left her home, with Georgina presuming that he was on his way to find and speak to Bella. While John and Eileen were a bit worried, and the fact that Bella or Adam hadn't as yet come back to the flat, they thought that either Adam was with Jacqueline, staying with his relatives who lived just outside Aberdeen, or that maybe Adam and Bella were trying to work things out. So, John and Eileen returned to the flat at Logie Avenue and went about their lives, presumably enjoying having a bit of time and space to themselves for a wee while. However, their time together in the flat would very soon come to an abrupt and shocking end when police officers came calling. Isabella, or Bella, McCabe met Adam's sheriffs in 1958 when she was about 34 years old. Bella had been married before and had 2 children, John and Murray, from this marriage. At this time, being divorced with 2 children wouldn't have been looked on favourably, and Bella would not have believed she would meet anyone else willing to take on her 2 children. That was until she met Adam. Adam was 4 years younger than Bella, but he had a good, steady, well-paid job as a steel erector, often working in new housing developments, and he had a gentle but strong nature to boot. The pair fell in love, and despite Bella having 2 children, aged 13 and 5 years old, Adam didn't care and loved the children as if they were his own, and the pair married in May 1960 at Aberdeen's Registrar's Office. Bella would work as a waitress in cafes when she wasn't looking after her children, and while money was tight, the family were settled and happy in their tenement flat at 27 Logie Avenue. 3 years after Adam and Bella married, they welcomed their first child together, daughter Jacqueline, who Adam absolutely doted on. But Adam was sure never to leave Murray or John out. He had more than enough love to go around for them all. and the neighbours were reported to say, according to the Daily Record in 1997, that the family were the most loving, stable family in the street. And so, when news got out of what the police officers who had come calling at 27 Logie Avenue on Wednesday the 27th of July 1966 had to say, the neighbours were shocked. Earlier that same day, a retired farmer, Hector, had been taking a leisurely stroll through fields and along the peaceful north bank of the River Don, which, according to Wikipedia, flows eastwards through Aberdeenshire to the North Sea at Aberdeen. As Hector passed through a small wooded area, his leisurely stroll came to an abrupt and chilling end when he came across the body of a man. Little did Hector know at the time that this discovery was only the beginning. When John opened the flat door at 27 Logie Avenue and saw the police officer standing there, he immediately knew something terrible had happened. However, as himself and his wife Eileen were asked to leave the flat immediately and were taken to an upstairs neighbour's flat, John could never have imagined just how terrible things were about to get. As the couple sat in their neighbour's flat in bewilderment and then horror at what they were told, other officers made their way into the flat at 27 Logie Avenue. John was told that his stepfather, Adam Sheriff's body had been found in a wooded area near the River Don earlier that day, and that when Adam's clothing had been searched, a note, a confession, written by Adam had been found. The note directed police officers to a field not far from where Adam's body had been found. Here, the body of Adam's young daughter, 3-year-old Jacqueline, was found. She had been strangled by her father, the father who doted on his young daughter. John was shocked by what he heard, heartbroken. However, more was yet to come. The note went on to say that Adam had also strangled his wife, Bella, and Bella's 13-year-old son, Murray. And as if it wasn't horrific enough for John to find out that his whole family was gone, he then was told that his mother and brother's bodies were still in the flat. John's mind immediately went to the locked bedroom door his stepfather and mother had shared. But no, after killing the wife and son he loved, Adam placed their bodies under the floorboards via a floor hatch located just inside the flat's front door. John and Eileen would have walked over the bodies of Bella and Murray numerous times since they had arrived to stay at the flat days earlier. According to the Press and Journal newspaper, on the 26th of July 2021, Eileen McCabe, John's wife, told a reporter that as she passed what was known as the death flat, as she had left to go and stay with her mother, she said that the hatch behind the front door had been raised, and that it was horrible to think we had been staying there without knowing their bodies were in the house. 2 hours after the police had arrived at 27 Logie Avenue, the bodies of Bella and her son Murray were removed in 2 coffins. The police issued a statement the following day after a short inquiry stating that they weren't looking for anyone else in relation to the murders. What must have been going through Adam's mind as he strangled his wife Bella, who he loved so much, and his stepson Murray, who he saw as his own son, is a mystery. However, he appeared to have the presence of mind to not only tell neighbours that Bella had taken Murray and left him, but also then go to Bella's mum's home and tell her the same, before he then led his 3-year-old daughter Jacqueline, who he absolutely doted on, to a field a few miles away from their flat and strangled her, before writing a confession so it was known what he had done and where the bodies were, and then he walked the short distance to the wooded area and took his own life. With front-page headlines in the Press and Journal being "Flat Horror, 4 Dead," news of the tragedy spread quickly, and the question on everyone's mind was why? However, while Adam had left a note confessing to murdering his wife and 2 children, he hadn't disclosed his reasons for this. Both Adam and Bella's family had absolutely no idea why. As far as they were aware, there were no serious issues within the marriage or family. There appeared to be no reasons, such as debts or of Adam having affairs. The family hadn't been involved with the police, and there was no history of violence. Neighbours and friends of the family said in an article in the Press and Journal newspaper that they were shocked and stunned. with one neighbour saying to the newspaper, "They always seem to get on fine. This is unbelievable. It doesn't make sense." Another quote in the Press and Journal newspaper from a neighbour and friend of the family read, "We all knew Bella and Jacqueline. They were a lovely pair, and she really loved her wee lassie to bits. It breaks my heart to think they are both gone." Bella was described as being popular, a hard worker, and caring deeply for her family and friends. Adam's workmates were also unable to shed any light on what had happened and were said to be appalled and astonished, with a colleague of Adam's going on to say in a Press and Journal article that Adam kept himself to himself and he focused on his job, but he always seemed to us to be a decent, down-to-earth lad with a dry sense of humour. Another colleague said that Adam was a very quiet, steady-going chap, and he was a good worker. I don't have any idea what could possibly have happened to cause this. Shock hung over Aberdeen long after the funerals had taken place, and many tears had been shed for the victims. But many still asked, why? Why had this tragedy happened? It was John McCabe, Bella's 21-year-old son, who offered a possible, if not very substantial, reason in a newspaper article later. He started by saying, according to a Press and Journal article, that my stepfather adored my mother, and he wanted to be with her all the time. He loved Murray, and he adored Jacqueline. He continued by saying that his mum, Bella, and Adam had a happy marriage, despite the occasional disagreement. However, went on to say that there had been tension in the family at times, and that it was no secret that Adam had sometimes drunk to excess, although he did say that he would never have dreamed that anything like this would ever happen. So what do you think? Is the fact that Adam sometimes drank to excess and that there were occasional disagreements in the family enough to suggest that this was what may have led to Adam murdering his family and then taking his own life? Or was it darker than that? John had said in the article that Adam had adored Bella and that he wanted to be with her all the time. Did Bella find this oppressive, and her wanting her own space perhaps had triggered Adam? Well, it's now been almost 57 years, and the question of why, in July 1966, Adam Sheriffs strangled the family he loved and then took his own life still remains a senseless, tragic mystery. A year earlier, on the 9th of June 1965, the same question was slightly easier to answer when shortly before 11 a.m. a man had been witnessed somersaulting from the top floor flat of a 15-storey building in Lochee, an area in the west of Dundee, and landing 140 feet or 43 metres below, where he lay wearing a shirt and trousers, but was barefoot. It was quickly established from those who had gathered around that breaking glass had been heard, and then the man had been seen jumping from the broken kitchen window. Upon the police entering the top floor flat, they immediately saw a female in her mid-20s lying on the floor wearing her nightdress with a black tie wrapped around her neck, with bloodstains on her face and body, and pulling around her. In the kitchen, the broken window was observed, as well as a basin full of water on the floor with a kettle beside it, with its leads having been disconnected and instead had been placed in the basin, and the other end was plugged in and turned on. Margaret Lundie was a 26-year-old mother of two and worked as a receptionist in a hairdresser's. She had split up with her husband and he had left Scotland and moved to London. However, the pair had recently spoken and were considering giving it another go. Following their split, however, Margaret had begun a relationship with 24-year-old Owen Macaulay, and Margaret and her two children moved in with Owen for a short while. However, 2 days before she had been found dead in the top floor flat, which was Margaret's mother's flat, Margaret and her two children had left Owen and moved in with her mother, as Margaret had been unhappy in the relationship because Owen was always working night shifts. On the morning of the 9th of June, after Margaret's mother had gone to work and her children had left for school, Owen turned up at the top floor flat wanting to speak to Margaret. However, the couple began to argue and Owen's temper rose to the point that he took off his tie, placed it around Margaret's neck and pulled it tight until all the fight and life went out of Margaret. Realising now just what he had done, Owen apparently was filled with regret, as the woman he wanted so much back in his life now lay lifeless on the floor. He was unable to live a life without Margaret, Owen then made his way to the kitchen, filled the basin in the kitchen sink with water, and placed it and the kettle on the floor, removed his socks and shoes, and stepped into the basin. He then disconnected the lead from the kettle, placed one end of the lead in the water-filled basin, and plugged the other end into the socket, and turned it on, hoping to electrocute himself. However, he failed to end his own life. In desperation, Owen then grabbed a kitchen knife and returned to the room where Margaret's body was lying lifeless, and he began slashing at his wrists, causing much of his blood to land on and around Margaret's body. Owen lost so much blood that one would expect this would indeed end his life. However, this was not the case, and therefore he returned to the kitchen, went to the kitchen sink where he had got the basin from, climbed onto the kitchen sink, and threw himself through the kitchen window in front of it. And it was this action that ended the life of Owen Macaulay. I got all of the information for Margaret Lundie's murder from the Law Killer's book by Alexander McGregor. If you have been affected by this week's story and would like to talk to someone, you can contact the Samaritans if you're in the UK on 116 123.